Why isn't the age of consent 18 in every state? I do think age of consent should be 18. 17-year-olds should not be with adults. However, age of consent is arbitrary. Your 18th birthday doesn't automatically bestow the wisdom to avoid being taken advantage of. We just have to draw the line in a way that brings about the best outcomes. The age of consent in the UK is 16. Seems pretty weird that it's older in other places. And don't get me started with you mental drinking ages. It's Civics 101. The United States is a conglomeration of 50 independent governing bodies that make their own laws as they see fit. Because PPL want to have sex way before 18, have been doing so of their own free will for millennia, and it's been fine. In Germany it is 14. Age of consent is stupid. There should be age difference laws. For example, 15 and 17? Okay. 15 and 22? No. 17 and 20? Okay. 17 and 25? No. Someone says in the comments that age of consent is 14 in Germany. A 14-years-old can have sex with someone of close age, not with a 30-years-old. This is Reddit, not America. Because if you have a boyfriend at 15, you have the right to have sex with him without committing a crime. So you think nobody under the age of 18 is capable of giving full sexual consent? I'm pretty sure the majority of 17-year-olds perfectly understand what sex is and can give consent. I have no idea what's predatory about that. Most minors start having sex at that age or even younger. The age of consent is not the age below which we believe kids should not be having sex. It's the age below which, even if as a matter of fact, sex is fully consensual, we will deem it not to be. That ought to be a very young age. 18? I think it's actually 20 in all of the South Korean states thinking face. Some states have been making laws since 1776 and it takes a deliberate effort to change the more backwards ones. There are laws on the books for everything from not allowing unrelated women to rent a room together, brothel prevention, to not being able to accuse your husband of SA. So some laws are there because there hasn't been a coordinated effort to get rid of them. But where the laws are deliberate, sometimes it's to prevent teenagers from being charged with a sex crime so a birthday doesn't suddenly make a relationship between a 17-year-old and now 18-year-old illegal. There are states where men have a criminal record because a parent didn't like that they were dating their daughter and did something about it as soon as they turned 18. But there's also a more nefarious reason where in some states, members of cults or backwards conservative religious groups want their teenage girl to be able to marry young, even to someone much older. And the population of these people is big enough to affect voting in that region, so they've been able to decide the age of consent. Some of it is also excusing predatory behavior. Just as sometimes judges won't hand down big sentences for rapists because they don't want to ruin a young man's life, people also worry about an adult's life being ruined because they had sex with a 16-year-old. Religion. They also fight for child marriage. This is just a guess, but I bet it has to do with farming and older generations. I remember that my grandparents getting married at 18 was not considered young at all. Also, I know my grandpa dropped out of school in the 4th grade. And I think my grandma went until 6th or something. So I'll wager a number of people may have been married and having kids by 16. I also remember my grandma telling me about how a lot of women were pregnant when they got married. You wanted to make sure you could have kids to help at the farm. The age of consent should be 16 with close-in age exceptions for teenagers. U.S. federal law does actually state this. Age of consent 16. 4-year close-in age exception provided younger is over 12. But this does not apply within U.S. state jurisdiction. Frankly, because the notion of 18 as adult, able to consent is actually pretty recent and not always agreed on. If you go read the wiki articles on the history of the notion of age of consent, though it mostly covers Europe with a focus on the UK, it does talk about how that influenced US thinking. Age of consent as a law that should be prosecuted is relatively recent in the grand scope of human operating. While the articles don't talk about this a lot, the rise in understanding childhood as a separate time and space of innocence is really a late 19th and early 20th century thing. The age of consent laws in the US started out piecemeal because every state defined their own. But those laws also started out being really frigging young from our perspective, like age 7. Age 12 at the oldest. Raising to 16 from 7 is a pretty big jump, I'd guess. And while in the last 20 years there has been increasing awareness and discussion about how these laws relate to child abuse, prostitution, trafficking, I think there are lots of other ways those things are outlawed, so there isn't this rush to raise the age in some places. Because states' rights. People of a state can set laws as they deem appropriate.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.